Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central 101. Before we get started today, just a couple of housekeeping items we need to deal with. Your questions can be asked in the question box. We are dedicating 5 minutes at the end of the session to answer these. And just to let you guys know that we are recording the session. We will upload the session to the Professional Advantage YouTube channel and send you the link as well. Our presenters today, Rob Giannini. Rob's been with Professional Advantage for a number of years now. He's a multifaceted specialist across products such as Great Plains, Microsoft Dynamics AX, Dynamics 365, Finance and Ops, and now a specialist with Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Business Central. Rob's got extensive experience right across the spectrum, both from a finance perspective as well as from an operational perspective. It brings a lot of strength to the business, very knowledgeable, and I'm sure you'll enjoy what he presents this afternoon. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Brian Pilsen. I am a business development manager at Professional Advantage, and my focus areas are around Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, as well as Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Business Central. My background stems from being an accountant all the way through being a consultant, as well as having spent time in the trenches in operational roles in multifaceted businesses. So this afternoon's session, what we would like to do is give you a bit of a hands-on experience as to what the application looks like. So Rob will be taking us through an overview of the application, the functionality involved. We'll be demonstrating some of the core functionality and features. We'll review some of the license types, talk about the limitations and benefits, and then we'll close with a question session. I'd just like to point out at this stage, given the fact that the product's quite broad, we won't be going to every little functional area of the particular product. So Rob's highlights some of those issues or areas which we believe will be of interest to everyone in the audience today. So, just in terms of what is Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Business Central. In essence, it's an advanced enterprise resource planning system with extensive functionality. The functionality covers aspects such as finance, sales, purchasing, as well as operations. We also have budgeting and inventory management within the suite. The objective of an ERP solution like this is to connect the people and processes in a single unified solution, enabling data to be quickly analysed and shared with key people throughout the organisation. The whole function of a multifaceted ERP system like this as well is making sure that you've got access to the most current information so that it's accurate, so that you can make some informed decisions about that. The platform itself is built on Microsoft Dynamics NAV, which is used by hundreds of thousands of companies throughout the world. Just as a footnote there, NAV, if we have a look at the footprint in Europe, it's probably the most extensive sold product out there. So what this sort of translates to is that there are a whole lot of users that have been exposed to the NAV product, that have been using the system, and now with 365 Business Central, what the advantages are. Obviously, we're talking about a cloud solution earlier, and it also brings additional functionality to the fore. If we typically look at the Microsoft product offering, we've got products such as Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations, and that is more for the enterprise play. There's quite heavy functionality involved with that. Quite a very robust platform, and that again is aimed at more of the sort of enterprise customers. We're probably looking at the 50 to 100 users minimum as a starting point for those, whereas Business Central is aimed at the sort of the mid-market customer that's out there. If we have a look at what we're seeing on the screen at the moment, one of the key aspects about the ERP offering itself, because it's a browser-based solution and deployed on the cloud, you have access to the solution across multiple devices. The important thing here is that it's device agnostic. You can have a browse and play with or work with the solution on your laptop, your tablet, your phone, and share and use all the capabilities that are out there. It's Windows and web-based. Also provides the user options to use this over multiple devices as well, multiple different platforms. Just one point I'd just like to bring up as well is that the adoption of cloud throughout the world has been quite phenomenal over the last couple of years. With 78% of businesses stating that they use mobile devices to access their work-related information while away from the office or away from their computer. So really what we're trying to do is work with Microsoft and actually provide a platform that doesn't prohibit you from doing your work whilst you're not tied to your office or tied to your laptop at work as well. Mobile technology has a positive effect on businesses. 84% of companies surveyed actually reveal that by going and adopting the cloud offerings out there, their employees and their staff can be a lot more productive in terms of the delivery of their daily tasks. What we're having a look at here, the licensing for Business Central 365 for Business Central comes in two packages, one being the Essentials functionality and the other being Premium. So within Essentials, the offering covers a broad range of functionality, things like financial management all the way through to procurement, projects, and if we have a look at the list and compare that to some of the more traditional finance packages that are out there, we'll actually learn that there's a lot more offering that's been offered within the new Microsoft packaging. So one really key aspect where the product's really strong as well, bringing in things like supply chain management and the warehouse part of it as well. So we also have the ability to, with OCR, so the whole procurement process, procure to pay, where that's nicely wrapped up, and Rob will be touching on some of that functionality during his presentation this afternoon. One of the key things there as well is the warehouse part of it. We have got the ability with third-party solutions, so being a Microsoft Cloud offering within the App Store, there are some additional modules that can be acquired, which actually adds additional functionality. So an example of that is obviously with regard to warehousing, where you need scanning, you need more advanced warehousing, opposed to what comes in the standard offering. So we have that ability as well. You have a very strong foundation, a very core, rigid core product, but then having the ability to add on these additional functionalities if we do require those. So the premium offering, what we bring in with the premium offering, and really the differential there is really just around the pricing on the licenses. We bring in things like service order management all the way through to production. We've got to point out that the production offering within Business Central is more aimed at the discrete manufacturing. It doesn't cater for process manufacturing at this point in time. But again, we also have the ability there to work with planning and dispatching, having a look at bills of material, and being able to use capacity planning within the fold as well. So what we're going to do, I'm going to hand over to Rob now, and this is probably the more exciting part of the afternoon for you guys. You get a look and feel of the actual product itself, and Rob will walk us through some of the key processes there. And as I said, if you've got any questions, please just enter them in the box, in the question box, and we'll ensure that we do get to them at the end of the presentation. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Brian. Well, welcome again, everyone. Great to see a great showing here for this webinar. What we're going to show you today is just a small select few pieces within the BC offering. I'm going to call it BC because I'm a bit lazy and can't be bothered saying Business Central. So if you hear people talking about BC, you'll know it's basically we're talking about Business Central. We're going to show you a small piece. It's just a few small snippets because if we had to show you all of the functionality that Brian's just gone through there, we could probably be here for probably somewhere between a week and a half to show you all that functionality. But having said that, if you do want to have a look at any of the modules that Brian touched on there in that listing, by all means reach out, and we're more than happy to do a one-on-one session with anyone and walk you through any of the functionality that you're not seeing today. So yeah, the bits I've chosen today really are the bits that should pretty much pertain to most people out there. I'm trying to appeal to the larger audience, and that is the areas I'll go through is just a brief overview. I'll touch on the general ledger area, the fixed assets, accounts payable and purchasing or procurement, some of the sales functions, and then finish off with a little bit of financial reporting. just to show you some financial reporting functionality there. So hopefully, like I said, it appeals to most users out there. But it's not intended to be comprehensive, show, look and feel of the product, because again, it would just take too long. All right, first and foremost, here I've logged on to Business Central. I'm just using, as you can see here, Google Chrome as my browser to access the product. Any browser can get you to the product. It's available in both, on all platforms, as Brian touched on there earlier. You'll see here, I'm running a Windows machine. I've also got the Windows app, and I'm basically logged on to the Windows app as a different user, and I'll quickly touch on the differences there. You'll see here that I'm logged on to the application here as, if I just move, see the little man in the top right-hand corner here, there's Robert Giannini with a picture of myself. So I'm logged on, and I have, every user is assigned a profile. And if I just have a look at my settings here, I'll see that, for example, in my settings is where I can chop and change and choose my different companies, and we'll talk about the different companies and how many companies you can have and so forth. Basically, you can have an unlimited number of companies, so I can chop and change my company there. And I can choose my role center. My role center is what you're seeing here on my home, basically my home page here, and all the information that's presented to me. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of out-of-the-box role centers that are available. These can be obviously altered, customized by ourselves, by PA, as part of your implementation when you're deploying this software. But there is a whole bunch out of the box that usually appeal to the masses anyway. You'll see here that if I just come back out of that screen, the role center I've got here just is intended to be a bit of a dashboard for the user. So with things such as what they call highlights or headlines across the top here, telling me, hey, I've sold products, what products are my highest selling and so forth. Again, they can all be customized to suit your particular organization. There's a whole bunch of action items that I can click on and directly take me to the areas of the ERP system to complete those actions. There's a summary of activities. Activities are things such as overdue purchase, invoices, and so forth. And you'll see here there's a whole bunch of tiles. This is the tile concept that Microsoft came up with a few years ago. And with the tile concept, in essence, what you're getting there is what they call a dynamic tile. So, for example, the number on the tile will change, or the value of the tile will change to reflect certain information that tile is representing, such as, I've got 6 outstanding quotes, sales quotes, etc. And if I keep scrolling down here, I've got a whole bunch of graphs, charts. Again, these charts are either standard insight charts delivered as part of the ERP system, or if I keep scrolling down here, you'll see here I've got Power BI reports, which are available, again, out of the box, part of the solution. And there's a whole bunch of Power BI reports that are available as part of the solution, which I can just flick through there and select and choose what I want to display on my homepage or part of my role center. If I switch over to the application version, which I had logged on as, and I'll switch over there, I wanted basically to switch over just to show you the different role center. Here I'm logged on as user Megan, and Megan has a slightly different role center, and you can see that's apparent in the fact that the different things that are displaying on Megan's role center. Now, role centers are intended to, again, be that dashboard that bring forward to the user information that's pertinent to their role in the organization. The way to navigate now is obviously I can navigate the system by using the items all on my home page here, or I can use the menus across the top here to navigate. So I'm just going to go back into my original browser here, and we'll come back to Megan in a minute, and we'll start to have a look at some of the functionality, in fact, within the application. First and foremost, I'm going to start off with the boring stuff and then ramp ourselves up to the more exciting stuff. So we'll start off with the good old chart of accounts in our finance area, because I know there's always accountants are always part of these webinars looking at stuff. Don't worry, I'm an accountant myself, so I know how exciting chart of accounts can be. So here we have a chart of accounts, a simple chart of accounts. You notice that this particular chart of accounts is structured in such a way that where we have things, certain accounts rolling up into other accounts, so we have header accounts such as the land and buildings account here, and as well as totaling accounts where we've got values totaling. So whilst we're viewing the chart of accounts, you'll also notice that there's a couple of columns displaying here. There's a net change column and there's a balance column. So the net change showing us the movement and the balance for that account. So, and you'll also notice that when I hover over those net balance and movement values, that they're actually hyperlinks, whereby I can actually drill down into those values. So I can use the chart of accounts to structure my accounts. I can then also use it as a way to navigate and drill into certain accounts if I wish to view values in those accounts. So I can use a chart of accounts as a quick way to get into, say, for example, I want to know what this $185 here is in GST, my GST account. I will just click on that value and the system will open up and show me the transactions that make up that $185, yeah? And of course, from those transactions, I can drill right down to the source documents and so forth. I just basically navigate, go to the entry. If it was a GL entry that didn't eventuate in the general ledger, and I can drill right back to the actual source document. So that's a bit about that chart of accounts. You'll notice the chart of accounts I've got here is just using a simple 4-character numeric, but the chart of accounts can be pretty much structured however you wish, in the sense that you can have an account code out to about 20 characters long. But one of the key things that the Business Central solution uses in our chart of accounts, it marries the chart of accounts up with a concept of dimensions. And if I just go to my dimensions area, I just quickly want to touch on this because I just want to quickly touch on the fact that you can have as many dimensions as you like. You'll see here I've got a dimension set up for my customer group, one for my department, one for my projects. Yeah, and now these dimensions, I can have as many as I like, and then I associate these dimensions back to my chart of accounts. So if I come back to my chart of accounts, and if I go down to my one of my expense accounts, and let's say I'll go to, I always like to click on my repairs and maintenance account, for example. If I look at my repairs and maintenance account, which is this one here, and I'll just click on that and open that, you see here, here's my repairs and maintenance account, and all the information pertaining to that account. What type of account is it? What's the default postings from a GST and perspective or tax perspective? But most importantly, I can come into this area here and I can nominate which dimensions are mandatory. In other words, whenever we post a transaction to this account here, the 8130 repairs and maintenance account, what dimension do I want to make sure we're capturing? And in this example here, you can see that I've said I want to capture the department account, dimension against this particular account. And I can make that a mandatory setting. I can make that a non-mandatory setting by just leaving this blank here, or say no code and so forth. Or I can even just make it so it's always the same account. Whilst so let's now see that in action, and I'll show that what that means in the way of a journal. So let's go to our general journal area and let's have a look at our general journals and how that all comes together. So now when it's time to enter a general journal, and I'll just come into my default batch up here. Here I have a simple general journal that I'm entering, and a general journal can be as simple as a one-line journal with, hey, I'm going to account, in this case here, 8520, and you'll see that when I'm entering that account, the way I can enter an account, I'll just clear this account out. I can actually select an account by just typing in the account number, or if I know the description of the account, I can just start typing in repairs, and you'll see that even though I'm in the account number field, that I can type in the description of the account, and the search will search anything that matches that in either the name or the account number field. So if I know that repairs and maintenance is 8130, I can type that in there. So if I know it's 81, you'll notice again, as I'm typing 81 and 813, all the 81s come up and so forth. So it's just a quick, nice, easy search, lovely interface for the product. So here I come into my department code. You can see there's that department code dimension that we talked about earlier, and these are all the valid values for department code. So I'm just going to put this to the administration department, this particular journal, and away I go. And that is as simple as it gets to entering a journal line using both an account code and so forth. Whilst I'm here, I quickly want to touch on the ability to edit or enter journals via using the a tool such as Excel. So how would I do this in Excel? I would basically come here and say page. I'll say I want to edit this journal in Excel, and you'll see that when I do, it just basically creates a GL journal Excel spreadsheet down here in Google Chrome, so just outputs that. And I'll just open this up, open this file up, and it'll open it up. We'll come back to this spreadsheet here in a sec. This will be my reporting one. But when it opens up my spreadsheet, you'll see that it opens up a spreadsheet which I basically first and foremost need to enable editing. When I say open up this spreadsheet, on the right here, you'll notice there's an applet opening up, churning away here. What this is actually doing is actually building a connection back into BC for me. So this is basically almost creating a live connection back into the database, or into the application, I should say, straight directly from the Excel spreadsheet. So first and foremost, it'll actually return whatever data I have in that particular journal that I'm currently working on. And you can see it, there it is, it's returned it on the screen for me. And now I can either add lines to this journal or alter lines on this journal however I wish in Excel, and then push that back in. So for example, if I want to alter this description here of the account that I'm posting to, this is for repairs to the vehicle or something. Now I'll hit the publish button down the bottom here in my applet, and what that'll do, it'll push the changes back up into the application. You can see down the bottom here, it gives me a little message to say, hey, the publishing was successful. If it wasn't, I'd get a little error message, a little red flag would appear down here, and I could click on that, and it'll actually tell me whatever the errors are. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is it's a validated publish as well, so it'll make sure you can't just push in any old information into any old field, because when I'm hitting that publish button, it's making sure that whatever information I'm pushing back into the application is being validated against obviously the valid account codes, valid descriptions, and document types, etc., etc. So adhering to all the business rules within Business Central. So now if we go back into Business Central, and I'll just come back out of that screen and go back in, just to show you that that change that I've made, if I go back in there, it should now appear in there. So there's that description change that I just made, straight from Excel. Now whether I added extra lines, I could have added extra lines if I wanted to, and they would all appear in here. So what I'm trying to demonstrate there is the ability to use Excel as either an editing tool or even a tool for uploading data. So I used it as an example here for a journal, but if I wanted to do a bulk mass change of, say, customer information or supplier information, you'll notice that that edit in Excel functionality appears on most screens. So in other words, if I come here to purchasing and I go across to my vendors, you'll see here I can show you a list of vendors. Here's a list of vendors with lovely pictures in this case here. I can switch this to different views, so I can go to a list view if I wish, or I can switch back to that tool tile view that we had a look at a minute ago. But any which way, what I'm trying to show is that I can say, hey, edit in Excel, where any list page that's in the application and has the edit in Excel function available, I can edit that information in Excel. So it's a great tool for uploading transactions or information, editing existing master file information, etc., etc. So yeah, some of that great functionality there. Let's go back to the journal. I just want to finish off there with just showing a couple other nice little features there. So back into my default journal that we were looking at a minute ago. So one of the other nice features is the ability to do things such as upload journals, such as using the Get Standard Journals functionality, which is, think of the Get Standard Journals as a template. So I could say get a template or pull through this template. I've got a template here called Payroll that I've created. Now Payroll, basically what that's going to do by pulling in that payroll journal is it's just going to basically bring in account codes that I've saved within that template. You can see here it's gone and added that line there, which is obviously come through from that template. So that's a great way of pulling in a predefined list of accounts, which I can then edit and use as a template for bringing in things such as payroll journals or standard journals or repeating journals, recurring journals. Another way to do that as well is if you do have actually recurring journals, is the ability to come in here, and you'll see I've got a batch here called monthly. So if I come into the monthly one, actually no, that's not what I wanted to show. I'll just come back, my bad. I'll come up here and to navigate into my recurring journal area. So my recurring journal, you'll see it appears slightly different because my recurring journal, one of the things you'll notice here is the ability to stipulate how I want it to recur. Do I want it to be fixed or variable amounts, or do I want the balance of the actual account to be recurring? And then I can actually nominate the recurrent frequency, so how often I want that to recur. And there's a whole bunch of formulas I can use in here. 1M is obviously 1 month, but I can use 1 day, 1 month, 2 weeks, 15 days. I can use whatever frequency I want, and there's a whole formula that I can build behind that. And then, of course, I set that frequency up. I set a posting date. I can even, if I go to the far right here, I can even set an expiration date for that recurrence. So in other words, I want the recurrence to stop on that date there. And away you go. I've got a recurring journal now that I can just come in here on a regular basis and just continue posting that particular recurring batch. The other functionality that we have is the ability to use deferrals. Now think of deferrals as a way of deferring costs or spreading costs potentially over a certain number of periods or months, accounting periods. In this case here, I've got an example where I've set up a journal. In this case, it's going to 8510, and I've said it's a journal for $1,200 just for simplicity's sake, and I want to use my 12-month deferral template that I've set up here. Yeah, and you can set up as many deferral templates as you like. I'm just using the 12-month one that I've created, which in essence is quite simply it's just going to split my $1,200 over 12 months. By this deferral code can be used in not just general journals, which I'm showing here, but can be used in any transactions, any sales transaction or purchasing transaction as well. And I'll point that out when we go through some of those screens. But in essence, once I've got that set up there, I can now come in here and I'll just quickly show you what that will do in that post. If I just show you that by showing you the deferral schedule, you can see that what it's actually going to do, it's going to post the $100 per month for each month now for the next 12 months. As simple as that. So without having to create a recurring journal, I can basically just create a deferral schedule, which basically will do that deferring for me automatically using the settings that I've set up in that template, and that'll have a that'll stipulate an offset account, etc., for that deferral schedule. So there's a couple of nice little, real quick ways of entering information and processing information. Now I'm using again general journals as a sample there, but a lot of that functionality that I've shown you there is available in other areas as well. As far as, just to finish off in the finance area, there's a whole bunch of different budgets that come with the system. So if we look in here, you'll see that I have a sales budget area, I have a purchase budget area, and of course I have geo budgets. You can have, I'll just quickly go into the geo budgets area. You'll see here, I can have as many different geo budgets as I wish. I can have, 2019 version 1, and it's just a matter of nominating which budget I want to pull into my reports when I design my reports. Pardon me. So the system doesn't necessarily, is not too fussed about which or how many budgets you have for a particular financial year. It's all configured in your actual reporting when you're reporting those budgets. You can also nominate here when you're designing your budgets. You can nominate which accounts they're for, which dimensions. Remember those dimensions I mentioned earlier. You can see that I can nominate which dimensions I want to include in a budget. You'll see here, for example, I was showing another client last week where I've designed a budget called Project XX, for example, where I am actually pulling in, I have a dimension for just for my projects, and therefore I am able to budget not just at department and customer group level, but I can also budget right down at project level using the budget's functionality here. All right, the next area I quickly want to touch on is the fixed assets area. Everyone has fixed assets. Just to quickly show you some of the fixed assets functionality. So when I come into fixed assets, first and foremost, there's a list of my assets. I've only got the one asset here today. Very exciting, with of course a picture of the asset. You'll notice that pictures everywhere throughout the system. When I click on that asset, there it is. It's a Microsoft Surface tablet with all the pertinent information you would expect. And I want to point out here that some of the information that we keep, especially around the depreciation book area. So you can see here that I have one lot of depreciation book information showing here, but you can actually have multiples. And the way we do that is if I just click on the add more depreciation books here, you'll see that this will switch to a grid view whereby I can now have as many different books as I want. Each book that I maintain for an asset has its own depreciation method, its own depreciation rate, and so forth. Yeah. So I can have a tax method, I can have an internal method. So the internal method, potentially in my case called company, would post through to my general ledger, whereas I might have a tax methodology that I may use for tax reporting purposes. And there's a little bit of other information here in the maintenance area where we can maintain information about the asset, or the last maintenance, when was it last maintained, etc., etc. Of course, there's all the standard information about the asset, location. You can structure your asset into asset hierarchy, where you have a main asset and a component asset, and so forth. So that's just a little bit of an insight on your fixed assets functionality. So yes, there's fixed assets functionality out of the box, and so forth. Of course, there is the ability, there's a full integration from the purchasing functionality coming back into the fixed assets register, and I'll show you some of that when we actually process some of the purchase stuff. So if I just come back into, and I'll just go straight into a purchase invoice, for example. Let's say, for example, I'm entering a purchase invoice, and I'll just say new. I'm going to enter a new purchase invoice. You'll notice, by the way, guys, as I'm navigating through different screens here, on the right-hand side of the screen, whether it be a list of invoices, which I have in this example here, or whether it be a list of vendors, there's a whole bunch of reports, and these are all Power BI reports that are rendered as part of the solution. And all the Power BI reports that are rendered on the right here in what we call our fact box area are actually all text sensitive. In other words, if I click on the next invoice, you'll notice that the information changes accordingly, and all the information in this text box, fact boxes, changes according to the record that I've highlighted in my list page on the left-hand side here. I can switch these fact boxes on or off by just clicking the little I button here, and that basically just gives me a bit more real estate to view some of the information, and I can switch them back on again. I can interact with the information in the fact boxes as well by just clicking on the information that's there. All right, let's go and add let's say we're going to add a new invoice here. I'm going to create a new purchase invoice. So if I create a new purchase invoice, you can see I can add a new purchase invoice by selecting my vendor and so forth. I'm just going to select a vendor out of my vendor list, and let's say we're going to use First Up Consultants as my vendor. There's a whole bunch of information here, so our next field I need to enter is my invoice number from the vendor, and then we get down to the line section of the invoice. When entering in line, what I wanted to point out here is you can see here I can point the line of this invoice straight to a GL account. I can point it to an item, in other words, an inventory item code that I may have created, and there's that integration straight into my fixed asset register. So I could select fixed asset here, and then select which fixed asset I want to allocate this particular cost to. So if I've created the asset structure, I can now create the purchase invoice or a purchase order and allocate cost directly to, and that's where basically the asset will inherit the value from this particular invoice. So I'm just going to go to GL account just to show you what a simple invoice looks like. And again, here I'm going to say, I'll say repairs again. And I'll say, that's not repairs. I'm going to say, there's my repairs and maintenance account again. And there's that department code dimension. I'm going to select my department code dimension again. This time I'm going to say production. And away we go. And say, for example, we want one item at $1,560. And that's a simple line item on a purchase invoice going to a GL account. Nothing more to discuss there, and away we go. I can now submit this for approval, say request approval, send this for approval, and off it goes. Now that's one way. That's one way of entering an invoice. Another way, which I'm going to touch on, is using a function via our inbox feature in Business Central. So Business Central has this area called a incoming documents area. So if I just come into my incoming documents area here, you'll see that I'm able to use my, well, let me explain this a bit more in detail. Let's take a step back. So first and foremost, the incoming documents area, think of it as it suggests, it's basically an incoming documents box or basket. Think of it as a basket that holds a bunch of documents, no different to an email address. In fact, this can be configured so it takes a direct feed from a particular email address. So what we have is we have customers who set up, say, for example, accounts at professionaladvantage.com.au, and any invoices that come into that email come directly into this incoming documents area in BC. And what they will do is I'll create a document which then can be submitted and routed throughout the organisation for approval, or ultimately converted into an AP invoice, etc. So what I'm going to do, rather than send an email in to myself, I'll just create one here manually. So I'm going to go new, and I'm just going to create one from a file. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to point this to a PDF file to mimic basically that process whereby an invoice comes in via my supplier, in this case here in PDF format. So I've just picked up a PDF that's coming from my vendor, and I've put it through into my incoming documents area. What that will do is it creates an incoming document record, and what we can do is that we can further, with the use of OCR and an OCR service, which is not part of the BC solution, but it does work with OCR services such as Kofax and so forth, which is what I've got configured here today. So I'm just going to manually send this off to OCR, but typically if you have an OCR service, you would switch on the a batch queue, which automatically would submit your documents to the OCR service. So when I come out of this screen here, you'll see that the document I've just created, which is this line down here, gives me a bit of a status from an OCR status. You can see here it's been sent to the OCR for OCR scanning and conversion. Then via that same batch queue, it would send it back to me with information. And once it comes back, we would expect to see that this would change from a status of sent to received or something like that. So what I'm going to quickly do here is I'm going to go in there again. If I just go actions, OCR, and I'm just going to manually receive this from OCR, and hopefully it will come back in time. There you go. Okay, so we can see here that it's come back from OCR as success, and when it's done that, you'll notice now on this screen here that it's obviously updated some information. So from the invoice, it's been able to obviously pick out the vendor name, the document date, the vendor invoice number, the currency, and of course, most importantly, the value. So what does that actually document look like? Just to give you a bit of an insight to what that document looks like, because I never showed it to you. If I actually just click on that document, it'll open up that document. There it is there, with some basic information. Simple invoice. It's come from Fabricam. It's come to me, Cronus AU, with some invoice values there, $1,800, 2078. Yeah, it looks like it's picked up all the right information there. Yeah, happy days. So coming back into the incoming documents area, what we need to do now is if I just go process, I can actually say, oh, well, based on that information that you've got from OCR, go and create a document. But before I do, just to quickly touch on this, we can also set up a whole bunch of mapping as well, just so that we can add some extra value to that mapping. So things like, for example, we could say, hey, wherever you see the word repairs, put that to the 8130 account. Whenever you see stationery, put that to the 8210 account, and so forth, yeah? Whenever we see this vendor name, put that to that account. Or just for this vendor, when you see that name, put it to that particular account. So we can add some extra smarts to the actual mapping of those documents before it actually creates it. But I'm just going to let it do its thing. So I'm going to go process, say create document, and see what it does. And there you go. It's told me that it's gone and created a purchase invoice 108429. It's gone and created with some warnings. So if I just scroll down here, it'll tell me what the warnings are about. It's saying, hey, warning down the bottom here, the 1,800 amount doesn't quite match the 2006, which is what's come in. And it's probably because there's probably some issue with GST or GST setup on that. But in essence, it's gone and created that document now. So it's told me that it's created internal document number 108429. Of course, I can navigate to that document. If I just go back in there, I can navigate directly to that purchase invoice that's created by clicking on the record here. And you see that it's gone and created, when that opens up, it's gone and created a nice purchase invoice with all the geo mapping set up as I set it up, and so forth, yeah? Nice and easy, quick, easy, and so forth. If I wanted to, I could also, which I haven't got switched on, I could actually, that incoming document, I think I did touch on it earlier, I could route that for approval by using some of the built-in workflows in the system itself. I haven't got that activated for this particular document type, being the incoming documents, but I will show you what those approvals look like. In fact, I've got a sample I'll work through now for a purchase order. So, but that's using the incoming documents feature in BC to process those documents. So what I'll do is I'll quickly touch on, if we were raising purchase orders, for example, we could raise a purchase order, route that for approval. What does the approval look like? Well, the approval looks like this sort of thing here, where as an admin, I can come into my homepage, click on the approvals area. I can see here that I have a purchase invoice awaiting approval. As the approver, I can drill down on this document, view it, information, approve it from there, approve, reject, or delegate from there. I can obviously drill into this to the source document. I was going to show you what that looks like on my actual phone, but just conscious of time, we're going to run out of time. The other thing I was going to quickly touch on was the interaction with Outlook and how we can use Outlook, but I will quickly show you that, and then we'll switch back. So what I'm doing here is I'm just opening up Outlook, and within Outlook, I've got my BC connector set up within Outlook. What that looks like within Outlook is, or what that allows me to do in Outlook is to do some queries. So if I just switch to my admin account here, you should see here that I've got some emails. Come on, when it catches up. Okay, so here I've got a couple of emails that have come in. Now, emails that potentially have come in from either a supplier or a vendor. In this case here, I've got a vendor who, being myself, Robert Giannini, who's saying, hey, I've got some outstanding invoices. You'll notice that I have a little button at the top here, my Business Central button in Outlook called Contact Insights. So when I click on that button with this email selected, you'll see that what it does, it opens up a little window on the right here within Outlook to basically connect to Business Central, because it knows that that email address is connected to either a vendor or a customer. And you'll see here that because I think that should be connected to both, it'll actually prompt me for that information. So any minute now it'll prompt me for that information. But what I want to show you is how I can then use this functionality. Here we go. So you can see here that it's saying, hey, that email is attached to a vendor or a customer. So I'm just going to select the vendor. When I select the vendor, it'll give me some brief information about that vendor. So here you can see that here I am in Outlook, yeah, with reading an email, and I'm able to quickly pull up that vendor's summary information and statistics on the right here. So when this vendor is sending me an email saying, hey, you have an outstanding balance, well, I can actually look over here and say, okay, well, I can see that I have outstanding orders for that much. I can see I can have, you know, outstanding invoices for $2,970. And of course, I can click on those invoices and it'll actually show me those invoices. And better still, I can click on the individual invoices and drill down into the actual source documents and so forth. The same goes for example, here, this email here that I've got an email where a customer potentially is asking me for a quote on some items. Again, I can use my Contact Insights to connect to Business Central, and it'll say, hey, you know, do I want to look at the customer or what have you? In this case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually say, hey, can you actually go and generate a new quote based on the information in this email? And because it's got the smarts to read through my email here, and on this email, I actually have the customer asking me for some items, line items. You'll see that what the Business Central plugin will do here, on the right here, you'll see it detects those line items, and it says, is this what you want to create on the quote in this example here? And of course, I'll just say okay there. And you can see here, with literally a couple of clicks, I've now gone and created a quote with line items and so forth on that quote. And there's the line items on that quote. Everyone can see that okay. I'll make that a bit bigger. You can see that there's the line items that are already on that quote and so forth. And now that's a saved quote in the system, and away we go. Just to touch on that. Like I said, I am conscious of time. I know I've waffled on a whole bunch there, and we don't want to keep you too much longer. So I will switch back to our slide deck and go through a couple other things I want to touch on. I was going to touch on some reporting stuff, just to show you some basic reports, but suffice to say that we can do some great financial reporting utilizing Excel and an Excel plugin called Jet, which allows us to run reports directly from within Excel. And I can show you more of that, but we'll do that in an upcoming webinar, so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Just to wrap up and move through the rest of the presentation, Here I'm going to quickly talk about the different license types. So Brian did touch on that there's obviously different flavors of Business Central. There was Essentials and Premium, but within that you can have two different user types. You can have a team member user or a full user. The team member user, you can see here, obviously does not have the ability to create transactions, but they can edit certain transactions such as timesheets and quotes. But they can update existing entries that are in the system, yeah? But a team member user can also be, if nothing else, can approve workflows, or a team member user can look at least do a read-only on existing transactions. So whenever they're using all those features that I showed you there earlier, they can actually look at the transactions from Outlook and so forth and do all those sorts of inquiries. Let's talk about some of the limitations that that come with the actual product. So you are allowed a instance. Within that instance, you can have unlimited number of companies. You also get an included free, what they call an accountant license. So that's a license you can grant to your external accountant, if you so wish, which doesn't count towards your user license count. There is a limitation here of data storage size. So once your total data that you store in the system hits that 80 gig mark, then you'll be prompted by Microsoft to obviously pay additional data. But you also do have, with this instance here, I will touch on the fact that you can actually have a Sandbox instance, so that's non-productive. And obviously you get access to obviously Cortana intelligence along with that. Quickly touch on the dual use rights, what that's about. The dual use rights here is all about, albeit it's available in the cloud, for those people who do want to deploy the solution on premise, you can still do that. So the solution is available as an on-premise solution. It just means that you won't get the access to all the updates that automatically get pushed out when you obviously deploy that methodology. That you will be obviously liable for your own. Once it's deployed on premise, you'll be liable for your own upgrades and hot fixes, etc., etc. Quickly touch on the questions area.
Yep, Rob. Firstly, thank you very much, Matt. There's so much to go through, and you guys can appreciate how big and how versatile this product is. So I really just want to say thank you to Rob. And what we will do, we will organise a couple of other sessions to delve into more of the operational stuff and for Rob to actually go through the mobility as well. We've had quite a numerous amount of questions come in, so I'm just going to fire them off quickly to you, Rob. We'll just try and handle a few of them, just being very mindful of time. But what we will do, all the questions will be answered to the respective contributors, and we'll make sure that everything is covered off that we need to cover off in terms of any outstanding questions with yourselves. So, Rob, just the first one. Is there consolidation and eliminations within Business Central?
Yes, so you can have an unlimited number of companies. All those companies can be in different currencies. They can be consolidated. Also, I noticed there's a question there around BAS functionality, which I didn't touch on. Yeah, it has full-on BAS reporting, etc.
Right. One other one. Does Business Central come with e-commerce integration capability?
There is some basic e-commerce, depends on what you term as e-commerce. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is depends.
Yep. So the question is more focused on the integration. We have the ability to integrate to an e-commerce solution.
Yes.
Right. Perfect. And then one of the old AX users, which is great question coming from them. Can period dates be defined as in AX using 445 principles rather than calendar month dates?
Yes, because your accounting periods, if I've understood the question correctly, the accounting periods are set up by yourself. You nominate what your actual accounting period lengths are. So it's not month by default. I had month, but no, your accounting periods can be whatever length you like.
Right. So as I said, we'll get back to everyone else who answered questions as well. Just really mindful of time. Rob, we just want to go to the closing slides and we can just wrap this up. Guys, we just want to thank everyone for attending this afternoon. We know that we've just run over in terms of the time schedules that we did have. But for our existing PA client base, please reach out to your account manager. For our new prospects and visitors as well, please reach out to either myself and Rob. And what we'll do, and look, the whole thing is really to try and engage, to educate you as much as we can about Business Central. And we're quite happy to engage in conversations and come out and meet you guys and give you a more in-depth demonstration or walkthrough of the actual functionality associated with Business Central. Once again, do want to thank you guys very much for your time this afternoon. Rob, big thank you to you. Great presentation there, and I hope you join us next time. Thanks so much.